Hey, Mark. I hadn't gotten back to your email. I'm just going the final touches and it'll go out on Wednesday if it doesn't go out tomorrow.
Okay. Now, do you need a list of people or no?
I was gonna do, I think you had said before, I think you gave me, did you give me a list already?
I gave you a list of companies, but I also have contacts in each company now and email addresses.
Oh, cool.
All right, I'll send it off to you.
Okay, because I have a contact in Ty and Bond and Fuss and O'Neill, but if you have other ones, I'll send it to both.
Yeah, there's like four or five companies that Morris recommended.
Wonderful.
Okay, good.
Very good. How did you get in?
I don't know.
I must have let you in.
I signed on about a few minutes ago and I was waiting for the host.
Because I was like, wait a minute, people can't get in. I must have not opened it yet.
There it goes. There's somebody.
There we go.
All right, I'm gonna hide.
Okay, enjoy the presentation.
All right, thank you.
Hello. How are you, Kimberly? Hi, Geneva.
Hi, Becky.
Hi.
I was on mute when I said, hi, how are you?
Yeah.
After 3 years, I would have figured this whole thing out, but.
Well, they're all different too. I mean, some days it's Zoom, some days it's all that the stuff the school and state do.
Yep.
Fight our way in. So I need to give you permissions for the presentation, Kimberly? Or is that?
Yes, and Tamsin will have the presentation on her computer.
I gotta grab this call. I apologize.
Oh, sure.
Hi, Rita. I just had to make sure people are finding the links and everything.
So when Tamsin logs on, Becky, she'll have the presentation.
Okay.
So if you can
So I'll
share
make
with
her co-host.
that would be great. Thanks.
Okay, and I'm going to make Melissa co-host in case I drop off. Great.
Everybody.
Hi, Rita. Hi, Eric. Hi, Melissa.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, we have one more minute.
Everybody warmed up from the last time we were together.
And then it was warm, and then it got so cold after that crazy rain this afternoon.
I have the fire going in the fireplace as we speak. Really.
I had to go to Springfield and it was 77 degrees when I got in the car down there. And then I got home, it was 57.
That's about right.
How did that happen?
And you couldn't see the mountains in Springfield because of the smoke from Canada.
Oh my gosh, it was smoky. Yeah.
I got in to come home to work, and when I hit 391, I can see Mount Tom. You couldn't even see that there was a mountain there.
Wow. Yeah, it's not good. Okay, it is 5:30. So I am gonna go ahead and call meeting of the Shutesbury Select Board to order. Today is Tuesday, June 6th, and this meeting of the Select Board is being held remotely via Zoom. And I will start off by reviewing the agenda, and then we'll get right into the meeting. So the first item on the agenda is, as usual, to have public comment period. And if you have a comment, I ask that you use the raise hand feature and limit your comments to no more than 2 minutes. We had on the agenda reviewing the minutes from May 9th, but they're not ready. So we are not going to be reviewing any minutes this evening. And then the biggest item on our agenda tonight is we have guests from Franklin Regional Council of Governments who will be presenting the Lake Wyola watershed based plan. And I think, so I see two folks here, I think from FERCog. After that.
Tamsin and Kimberly. Yeah.
Yep, okay.
Tamsin is labeled FERCog 1.
And Kimberly, I think, well, oh, there she is. Okay, up there. And after that, we'll just do a review of annual town meeting. Then we have the Shutesbury Elementary School roof contract and town administrator updates after that. And I don't believe, Becky, was there anything else that we needed that was unexpected for this evening?
Not for this evening.
Okay, all right. So I want to open the meeting up for public comments. Again, please use the raised hand feature. This is a relatively small group, so I think I can see everybody. Mary Lou?
Hi, yes, Mary Lou Kanka. For the note keeper, I live on Wendell Road. I'm just curious with recent activity on lot 032, where the discussion, if there even is one, is being held regarding the police chief's, I would just quote it as misbehavior involving a town senior citizen. And what's happening with people walking
Mary,
on that
I don't think we
piece
can
of
talk about
property?
that.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Melissa.
We can't talk about that in public.
Well, the second part of the question, I mean, it's an open question. And the second part, I don't get it. Why can't you talk about it?
Well, first of all, we don't engage in discussion during public comment. Public comment is just that.
Thank you.
I assume that maybe what Melissa was going to say, I'm sorry, I had to step away for a minute, is there's litigation involved, so we cannot discuss.
Thank you, Rita.
Okay, you're welcome. Other public comments? Okay, Miriam, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to mention that we do not have a quorum, so the Concom didn't post as a co-meeting as we had hoped. And I wanted to ask, when the discussion about the watershed-based plan happens, will there be an opportunity for public comments, questions, discussion, or is it just the presentation?
Why don't we, when we start that, why don't we talk about that? Is that okay? When we formally start the presentation, why don't we talk about that? Okay, Susie, go ahead.
I want to appreciate all the work that went into getting through, getting ready and through town meeting. And I'm glad we accomplished as much as we did. And I know that there's still work ahead, but I appreciate people's efforts.
Thank you, Susie.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Rob, go ahead.
Thank you. Just real quickly, I would like the select board to consider putting a solar powered flashing stop sign at the end of Prescott Road. It's still a dangerous intersection. I know we've improved it by adding stop ahead signs, but I've still seen some close calls there. I don't even know if we can do that legally because it's at a state highway junction, but I'd like to see us do something for the residents.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Okay, are there any other comments? Okay, hearing none. As I said, we're gonna skip over the minutes because we don't have any to approve. So we have Kimberly and Tamsin here from FERCog to talk about the Lake Wyola watershed-based plan. So as Miriam asked, I haven't seen, I assume you're presenting the plan tonight, is that correct?
Correct. We're going to present hopefully for about 25 minutes and then have another 20 minutes for comment.
Okay, all right. Does that answer your question, Miriam?
Yes, thanks.
Okay. So you don't have a quorum, correct?
We do not, and we didn't post.
Oh,
So
you didn't post. Oh, okay. All right, good. All right, so I am going to hand it off to Tamsin. Are you taking the lead here?
Yes,
Okay. And do you have a PowerPoint that you're?
I do. I'd love to be made host.
Okay.
I did make you co-host already, Tamsin.
Great. Yeah. Okay, folks see the presentation?
Yep.
Yes.
So I'm Tamsin Flanders. I'm a land use and natural resources planner at the FERCog, as well as along with Kimberly, who's here. We're gonna both give parts of the presentation. So I want to start with this quote that I found just last week. Lakes in New England were formed about 15,000 years ago. Once deep and clear, they are gradually accumulating and filling in with sediment, nutrients, and plants, and eventually when they are entirely filled in, they will become wetlands. Lake aging typically takes place in a geological timescale, which is very long and passes extremely slowly compared to our human timescale. However, humans are accelerating the natural lake aging process by increasing the amount of nutrients, particularly phosphorus, sediment, and other materials that flow into a lake from throughout its watershed. I modified this slightly for our context, but the reason we're here is because Kimberly and I have been working on a watershed-based plan for Lake Wyola, not for the Deerfield, that's just to show you that we do other ones. We've been working on a watershed-based plan for Lake Wyola to sort of help the watershed community think about ways to manage that sort of accelerated human impact to the lake. So we're writing this plan as a part of a program that the Department of Environmental Protection, or DEP, is funding. Watershed-based plans can get written for watersheds with identified pollutants or what are considered healthy watersheds. This work is funded under Section 319 of the Clean Water Act, and watershed plans are designed to identify past and current water quality conditions and known and likely causes and sources of non-point source pollution, which I'll explain in a second, to find what data is out there and what data gaps should be filled, to prioritize problems and threats in the case of healthy watersheds or both kinds of watersheds, identify appropriate best management practices and watershed-based strategies. And a watershed-based plan is required by DEP and the EPA for any implementation projects that are funded by the Section 319 non-point source competitive grants. They're also helpful generally for just going after other grants and sort of organizing the flow of work. Non-point source pollution is not from a specific source like a discharge pipe or wastewater treatment plant. And these days it's typically reaches water bodies by traveling with stormwater runoff, because stormwater runoff, of course, So it rains all over our landscape, and then that stormwater flows over land and picks up pollutants like sediment, vehicle chemicals, fertilizers, pesticides, pet waste, manure, road salt, and more. And these days, most of that comes from developed areas, such as village centers or downtowns, roads and culverts, residential areas, lawns, and agricultural areas. And so non-point source pollution is, at this point, since over the last 50 years, we've done a really good job with dealing with those point sources. Non-point source pollution is now the greatest cause of water quality problems in the country. And because it's so diffuse, it means that we all have to play a role in managing it. So on top of, well, so non-point source pollution is not something that neither just Lake Wyola watershed is dealing with, nor just in our lifetimes, nor is it a problem created in our lifetime. Land use by humans has been changing hydrology and stressing water quality and ecosystem function for a long time. Permanent land clearing and forest cutting, getting rid of or not replanting riparian buffers, developing close to water bodies, modifying stream channels, and of course, introducing invasive species are all land use impacts that have played a role in watershed hydrology no longer truly being a natural system. And on top of that, now we deal with the impacts of climate change, which create another set of stressors. Heavier storms are making water come faster, or I guess all at once, which is then less able to slowly soak in, picks up more pollutants. It can increase erosion and potentially overwhelm septic systems. We're dealing with potentially more frequent droughts between those heavier rain events, which means that pollutants with less water in a water body, the pollutants are then concentrated. And then hotter temperatures, which can superheat stormwater as it runs over heat absorbing surfaces like roads, polluting the receiving waters with warmer water. And so for all these reasons, capturing and treating stormwater closer to the source is super important, especially that first inch of stormwater, that first flush that takes away most of the pollutants. And just to illustrate this, the difference between runoff and infiltration, once again, typically in undeveloped areas, we might see that of all the precipitation, 50% gets infiltrated, 40% is taken back up into the atmosphere, and then only 10% or so reaches water bodies in the form of stormwater runoff. But then the more you develop, the more stormwater runoff there is and less infiltration there is. Obviously, we're not looking at Lake Wyola, we're looking at Boston or somewhere, but that the principle is still there. So in Lake Wyola's watershed-based plan focuses primarily on two types of non-point source pollution. The lake is listed in the Mass DEP's integrated list of waters, which is a document that they have to produce for the EPA every 2 or so years. It's listed as having a phosphorus impairment. An impairment is basically, they look at how sort of the concentrations of pollution that are in a water body based through sampling. And if that concentration is higher, then they've just what sort of the standard that they've set for different uses like recreation, habitat, and aesthetics, that it's considered impaired. However, as we worked on the plan, we discovered that maybe there wasn't actually an elevated level of phosphorus, and therefore maybe it's not impaired, and that sediment might be of equal or greater concern. So the second type of pollutant we looked at most closely was sediment. And again, it's not listed as having a sediment impairment, but we heard that this was a significant community concern, one that we've, in Kimberly's decades of work in the in Franklin County, working with rivers and lakes, we've seen over and over again. And then one that we recognize the importance of when we were reviewing the literature and visiting the watershed. And based on our assessment, stormwater sediment seems in Lake Wyola like it's primarily coming from stormwater, and stormwater's impact on road erosion, especially on the west and east sides of the lake. And then we also want to consider the contribution of stream erosion, the fancy word for that being fluvial geomorphic impairments. Stream erosion as a contributing factor to sediment in the lake from the tributaries, primarily probably Fisk Brook. So in looking at sediment and stormwater and fluvial geomorphic impairments has multiple benefits, including that sediment carries phosphorus. Phosphorus likes to bind to sediment. So reduction in sediment can also mean reduction in phosphorus. So just to give you a little sense of how we went about working on this plan, Lake Wyola was on our radar because of that listed impairment. And so we reached out to the town and talked to LWAC around December 2021. LWAC, I probably don't need to tell any of you, but just in case, LWAC is the Lake Wyola Advisory Committee. That's an advisory committee to the select board. So then we visited the watershed and we had a consulting engineer visit the watershed. In last summer, the DEP looked at a draft at our watershed-based plan. We had to put it down for a little while, and then we picked it up again this spring, and showed a draft to the Concom and LWAC. And then now we are here in June with this public forum and review period. So we started writing the watershed-based plan by looking at previous and ongoing work done for Lake Wyola. We reviewed 6 previous studies completed between 1997 and 2019. The plan, I'm not going to summarize them here. The plan contains a table summarizing the documents, their recommendations, and some status updates on those recommendations. And those recommendations, to an extent, informed our recommendations. We also took a look generally at the watershed, at the acreages of water and forest and other kinds of land uses. We looked at what streams were contributing and ponds were contributing to the lake and what activity was going on around them. We looked at roads around the lake and other infrastructure like septic systems, and then also generally at property ownership, because property ownership determines a lot about what can be done with BMP's best management practices. We also looked at the water quality data that was available and then identified the gaps between that data and what would be ideal to know in order to move forward with projects. So phosphorus, there's pretty minimal data because it's not sampled for often, but the most recent sampling in 2014 was well below the state's water quality standard, which is a good thing. And then the Lake Wyola Advisory Committee monitors Lake Wyola Association's beaches every week or 2 weeks in the summer for E. coli. And the sampling data always with the exception of one time in the past 6 years at one beach, shows acceptable levels. And then there's not really any data for sediment. And so we were relying on anecdotal and photographic evidence. We also looked at land use and impervious surface, especially around the lake, because that's where most of the action is happening. So based on land use, our observations of land use and impervious surface, we identified nearby roads, erosion of unpaved roads, lawns, and piped stormwater outfalls as the general areas that stormwater runoff would be picking up pollutants and reaching the lake. Like I said earlier, we also looked at stream erosion from fluvial geomorphic impairments. And then we considered a number of additional sources, and our sort of conclusions on those are all in the plan. So including agriculture, mining or gravel mining, boat wakes, forests, which are a natural source of phosphorus, groundwater withdrawal, which has to do with that, you know, which impacts can impact the concentration of pollutants in a water body, septic systems, underground storage tanks, and waterfowl, the presence of waterfowl. So in every watershed based plan, you have to set a pollutant loading goal. That was not so fun in this case because we had to get, I mean, it was fine. It was fine. It was just challenging because we had identified that the water quality standard had already been reached for phosphorus. So we worked with the DAP to identify that our load reduction goal was just going to be any reduction in order to protect existing high quality waters. And then with sediment, that's generally measured as total suspended solids when it's in the lake. And so when setting goals, we speak in terms of loading, which is how many units of a weight per year are reaching the water body. And the modeling tool that we used predicted that there were 113 tons per year of sediment reaching the water body. And so then we looked at how many tons would be getting to the lake, like if there was no development. We set it to the pre-development kind of setting. And then the difference between those two, so how much more sediment there is predicted because of development, we set that as our load reduction goal. And we did that with DEP's advising us as well. And again, models are limited, and these may underestimate the current total load of phosphorus and sediment because they don't necessarily know the conditions of the rivers and whether there's a lot of erosion going on or not. They don't know how erodible the roads are, etc. Kimberly, do you want to take it away?
Sure. Thank you, Tamsin. So we've Tamsin has summarized the studies that we reviewed and given you some background on the water quality data, the data gaps, kind of what the current situation is, and with the lake. And the takeaway is that the lake water quality is by and large very good. So opportunities for managing the watershed, for continuing to improve the water quality and protecting the high water quality of the lake are the things that this plan took a look at as well. So you'll see on the slide that we looked at kind of 3 categories of watershed management opportunities. The first being more study. And even though there is this large body of work that has been done for the lake, most of it is quite old. We've learned a lot since the first study was done in 1997 about watershed management in general. One of the things that we've learned is that the hydraulics and the hydrology of the watershed is a really important thing to understand. And basically that's a fancy term for what happens to the water when it falls on the ground. what are the pathways that it travels? How does it enter streams? How does it enter the lake? And as it's flowing across the ground surface, what is happening? Are the tributary streams eroding, for example? Is how much water is being infiltrated? And so having a better understanding of what happens when stormwater moves across the land in a watershed can really inform what kinds of management practices are needed. So you'll see voluntary residential best management practices as well as constructed best management practices. So having a better understanding of how the watershed is currently functioning could help us identify, like shorten the list and really target things that individual landowners can do on their property around the lake, such as using rain barrels or planting rain gardens, planting native plants and shrubs right along the lake boundary to provide what's called a riparian buffer to kind of take up stormwater and clean it before it enters the lake. The constructed best management practices, culverts and water bars and road turnouts and check dams, those are all things that need to be designed by an engineer based on the information that they get from the H&H study and a geomorphic study. Because when we think about the storms that we're getting now with climate change, these constructed stormwater management features need to be able to handle certain size storm events, but also we need to look at the recurrence interval. So there's a lot of engineering and math that goes into identifying which best management practice, which feature would work and what size it needs to be. The other challenge that we have is that most of the land around the lake and in the watershed itself is privately owned. So as part of identifying what structures could work, we also need to think about which private landowners might be willing to be part of that discussion, because you know, the town can do work on property that's controlled by them, but they really need to partner with the private landowners to, you know, do the other work on private property. We have the next slide shows you some of these what they call constructed or engineered best management practices. And the ones shown on the slide are suitable for rural areas. They don't require a whole lot of maintenance to function properly. They're relatively low cost. Some of them can even be quite lovely, like the rain garden that's shown in the lower right-hand side of the slide. These features can also provide, like the water quality swale in the rain garden, they can provide opportunities for wildlife habitat, pollinator habitat. And what they do is they, as Tamsin talked about earlier, they treat the stormwater closer to the source, so it's not running over larger areas of land and picking up more pollutants. These features can filter and treat the water and either infiltrate it close to the source, or once it's discharged, it's cleaner. Next slide, please. The other opportunities we have for improving watershed management are monitoring, education and outreach, and maintenance of these best management practices. So one requirement that DEP and EPA have for this program is if they're going to fund implementation projects, they want to see progress being made towards the goals that we talked about earlier, towards reducing sediment loading and protecting water quality. So a water quality monitoring plan might be a part of the next phase of work. The community could decide that they wanted to start monitoring for phosphorus. And if we had sediment management features, we could document the accumulation of the sediment in those stormwater structures. Education and outreach is always a really important component of any watershed management work, because the people who live in the watershed, live around the lake, can do so much to help protect this beautiful resource that the community really cares about so much. And ways to kind of disseminate information about what the sources of pollution are or potentially are, and how that can be mitigated or managed is really important. And we do have partners that can work with the town on this, including the Lake Wyola Association and LWAC. And a lot of this education and outreach can be hands-on, tours of structures that are installed, or tours that help identify locations where these structures could go is one way. And it can be really fun, involving kids and students, for example. And we need to remember that Wendell, our watershed neighbor is Wendell. And we will be reaching out to them again and doing the same presentation for Wendell to talk to them about the findings and get feedback from Wendell. Maintenance, that's another important component of a watershed management strategy, road maintenance plan, best management practices for operations, beaver management. That's another direction that can be explored, because there are beaver in the upper portion of the watershed. The highway department can continue to do or adopt new practices that can help keep sediment out of the lake. And then waterfowl control is another option as well. And do we want to go to the next slide? Sure. So the next steps are the public review of the draft plan, which will be posted to the town website. We'll be transmitting a copy of the plan to Becky tomorrow. So the public comment period will open on June 7th. It will run for 30 days. Comments on the draft plan can be mailed to me, and my contact information is on the slide, and we'll also include it in a little notice that accompanies the plan that can be posted on the website. We'll print out a few hard copies of the plan, and they can be at the public library. Becky, if you think having one in your office would be helpful, we'd be happy to do that as well. As Tamsin mentioned, we'll be scheduling another field visit over this summer, and we will share that information once we have a date with Becky, so it can be on the town website. If there are other ways to get the word out, we'll share it with the Lake Wyola Association as well. If there are other ways to get the word out about that, please let us know. And if there are pictures that folks have of stormwater runoff problems or sedimentation that they want to share with us, and their pictures of their own property, that would be great. We don't want to create a problem with this ask. We definitely just want to, people to document conditions on their own property if they choose to do so and they want to share. So after the watershed visit in the summer, we'll revise the draft plan with any comments that we've received, any information we've received from the watershed visit. We'll submit the revised draft to, it will be a final draft at that point, to the DEP and request approval, which will probably take a couple months, but we should have that by the winter time. And then the next slide, please. Once the watershed-based plan is approved, the town will be eligible for implementation funding from the Mass DEP Section 319 grant program. That's the one that's shown in the middle of the slide there. That will fund projects that restore and protect water bodies, implement those stormwater best management practices, public education and outreach, actual, shovel in the ground projects. It will also fund updates to zoning bylaws that are protective of water quality. There is a 40% match required. Some communities meet that match with CPA funds, community preservation funds, or MVP funds, because those are state funds, MVP and CPA. So Shutesbury is well positioned if they choose to go forward at some point with a 319 grant, because you're designated a municipal vulnerability preparedness community, and you've also passed the CPA, the Community Preservation Act. There are other sources of funds listed here that can help either fund a project or meet match requirements. The 604B grant program, which is shown on the left of the slide, that would be the grant program that could fund the additional assessment work that we talked about earlier, the hydraulic and hydrologic study, the fluvial geomorphic study, the deeper dive into where the problem areas are, what types of structures, stormwater management structures would be appropriate. Preliminary designs can be prepared under that grant program. And then oftentimes implementation projects that are identified under a 604B grant are very well teed up for funding under the 319 grant program. And the FERCOG currently has funding to assist with the preparation of grant proposals to the 604B program or the 319 program. So we'd be happy, once you've had a chance to take a look at the plan, we'd be happy to come back and talk to you more about the funding opportunities and how we can help with that if the town is interested in moving forward, taking any steps beyond this watershed-based plan. So with that, I think our next slide is our question slide, and Tamsin and I would be happy to take your questions. Thank you.
Okay, I think the best way is I will just recognize people so we have some control over how questions are getting asked. So if you have questions for Kimberly or Tamsin, just please use the raised hand feature. Okay, I see some questions already. Okay, Rob, go ahead. You just need to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Trying to unmute. I heard the statement made that sediment was a serious community concern. What community? Were people other than those who live right near Lake Wyola contacted? Or is that information and position one of only Lake Wyola nearby residents? For example, there are a lot of people who use recreational boats on the lake that are not residents or are residents and don't use power boats. So what community, please?
Tamsin, can you take that one? I was going to say it was anecdotal information that was supplied by the, well, let me take a step back. There was, I think, Tamsin, right, there was mention of sediment being a concern in some of the studies that we reviewed. And then there was recent, pictures and conversations that we had with some folks that mentioned sediment as being.
But it was all anecdotal and no real surveys of population at large.
Correct. There
Correct
wasn't.
that there was no survey of the population at large. The 2005 NRCS plan looks at sedimentation of North Cove and describes a general community concern of the Lake Wyola resident community. And I think we heard clearly that there was concern about erosion of roads around the lake and that sediment reaching the water body.
Okay, but
Rob,
once again, you're going back to no survey. Okay, that answers it. Thank you.
Okay, Tracy?
Yes, thank you for the work you've done. This is a great report. It clearly outlines so many things. I am a resident over at the lake. So I think I heard you say that the town, so my question for you is, can the town partner with Lake Wyola Association, who owns most of the private roads? Is that like a legal okay thing for a town to partner with privately owned roads? Especially because it is, the LWA is a 501c3 nonprofit whose mission is to preserve and protect the lake and to maintain the roads around the lake. So it seems like a natural fit.
Yeah. So the short answer is yes, there are funding sources that will support a public-private partnership.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Ron, I see you waving. I'll change the question, but again, I just ask people to use the raise hand feature.
I'm sorry, I have no raised hand icon
okay.
at the bottom, so I didn't know what to do. As somebody who lives in the watershed, I really appreciate this work that you folks have done. And I liked hearing the statement that the water quality is good. I am a little disappointed in what you've presented in two areas. One is the lack of testing, water quality testing, particularly for phosphorus, is 9 years old. We really need to do a better job on that. And I'm glad to see that you saw that in one of your later slides as a recommendation. The other is it seems to have minimized the importance of septic systems and nutrient runoff from septic systems. I'm literally sitting here on the Cape right now, and it's pretty widely known that 80% of the nutrients in the Cape ponds come from septic systems, the rest from storm water runoff and fertilizers. So I just would encourage you to emphasize that more in your document here, because it's a source of a significant source of phosphorus, I believe, into the lake. Thank you.
Is there anything you want to respond to, Kimberly or Tamsin?
I think we had reached out to the Board of Health about the septic systems, and the sense was that that might not be a likely source based on their oversight. So it could, I think that this is something, at least for us, or for, we could think about, or it could be, potentially it could be a recommendation in the plan, but I would want to have another conversation with the Board of Health first, and maybe pass along this feedback that we're getting tonight, and before I would change what we put in the plan, because we feel comfortable with what's in the plan now based on the conversations that we had. And so I don't want to promise that we'll change it necessarily, but I think it warrants going back and having another conversation with the Board of Health if the town feels comfortable with that approach.
Thank you.
Thanks. Miriam?
Thanks. So thank you so much for the presentation and for putting together this very useful and informative report. I really appreciated reading it and talking to you guys as well. I just have a few questions. I'm just going to throw them out there and then maybe you can comment on them. One is that when you do set up the watershed visit, could you also reach out to the Conservation Commission to invite us to participate? Would that be okay?
Oh, sure. Yeah, the invitation would be open to all town boards and committees. So
Okay.
we'd
Great.
be happy to have you participate.
So the questions I have, and I just want to make the observation that on the Conservation Commission, we are frequently reviewing projects down by the lake, and we have lots of discussions with landowners about concerns about runoff and erosion and vegetation around the lake that people are either removing or are building up. And we're concerned about these issues. We're also limited to some extent in terms of the tools that we have in our jurisdiction. So one of the questions I had was, what kinds of bylaw options are there available for communities that might want to look at ways to improve and protect water quality around lakes, residential lakes? So that was question number one. And then the other question was, it really had to do about the S319 grants and the 2007 report that was done by DCR. My understanding is that for a 319 grant, you sort of have to have some somewhat shovel-ready projects. And I guess I'm wondering about how much design work needs to be front-loaded in order to be competitive for a 319 grant, and whether that 2007 report would meet some of that, or whether we need more engineering of BMPs.
So I'll answer the last question first. So the 319 program can be fairly forgiving in terms of the level of detail on a conceptual design, depending on what the project is. So for a stormwater management structure, you would probably need to have at least a 30% design done. And the critical part of that is the sizing of it. So what's the drainage area it's going to be treating? What is the storm event it's sized to? What is the size of the storm, and what is the recurrence interval? So all of that information would have to be done, because the DCR report is just too old, and the science is a lot better in terms of stormwater designs. The 604B grant would, if a further assessment was done, that would generate potentially the 30% design level, and then you would be ready to apply for a 319 grant. The MVP program will do projects in phases, so that program could fund the assessment and conceptual design. So it would probably be, assessment would be phase 1, conceptual design and permitting would be phase 2, and then phase 3 would be implementation. Regarding zoning, there are many things that a community can do to manage new development. So flood resiliency and stormwater runoff and water quality are protected and addressed. In this particular situation, because so much of the area around the lake is already developed, I'm not sure what options might be available immediately around the lake. And in the upland portion of the watershed, I would have to take a look at the town zoning and see what Wendell does to see if there are any opportunities there. So my sense is zoning in this case is maybe not going to be as helpful as unpaved road management and stormwater management. But the FERCog currently has a zoning project where we're working with Shelburne, Greenfield, and we will start working with Bernardston to update their zoning bylaws to be more protective of water quality and to manage stormwater better.
We're also working on a project to develop a toolkit for dirt road management for water quality. And so that will be available to the town soon.
Great, thank you.
Rob, I see your hand. I just want to see if anybody else has questions who hasn't had a chance. Other questions for Tamsin or Kimberly? Folks who haven't. Okay, go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, and yes, certainly I should wait my turn. 2 questions, one of which is quick. I saw on the slide that Lake Wyola Association only reported one date where the water was out of safety standards in 6 years. That flies against the state beach having to have closed multiple times in the past years for the same reason. So I'm wondering why the state beach data wasn't included. That's a quick question.
Yeah, the simple reason being that no one's ever been able to get the state speech data that, from what I've heard.
I believe you, but it's ridiculous. I'm sorry. All right. Second question. The term beaver management. Usually that means removing beavers or minimizing their dam structures. But a lot of stream restorations to restore the water quality downstream uses something called BDAs, or beaver dam analogs, where people build what looks like a beaver dam to allow for essentially a check dam, which is something you said was a good idea. A beaver dam does produce an area where stormwater will accumulate and sediment will drop out. So is beaver management beaver elimination or bringing beavers into the area?
Do you want to take that, Tamsin?
I think mostly what I would say not exactly either. I think mostly what we had in mind was doing an assessment to know what sort of level of beaver damming of the ponds could impact the watershed if they were to fail, and then to use beaver exclusion structures to sort of manage the extent to which they're might be raising pond levels. And then I hadn't heard that term before, BDAs. I love that, but we do imagine that places like Biscuit Brook could be a good place to do something like that. We have done some projects using the chop and drop method, which is a similar application of large downed woody debris to slow flow and help the river access its floodplains a little more.
Yeah, and I would just say that not only have we learned a lot about rivers and watershed management practices in the last couple of decades, I think that we've also learned a lot about beaver and how they can assist with flood resiliency and watershed health. And we've also, I think that we've also come a long way in using more humane methods if they need to be redirected or relocated. So when we say beaver management, we were looking at the whole universe of that. We weren't, and like Tamsin said, it really does need further study because there's very little current information available on the conditions really in the watershed related to beaver.
Okay, thank you.
I see Tracy. I just want to make sure anybody who hasn't already had a chance to ask a question. Okay, go ahead, Tracy.
Yes, I just wanted to ask if the Board of Directors of Lake Wyola Association were invited to this meeting, because I don't see any of them on here. And in addition, also the owner of the Laurels, which I think her name is Priscilla Haggerty. Or Beck, you might be able to confirm that, but none of them are on the meeting.
So I did.
That's my question.
I did send the meeting notice to the Lake Wyola board, and because they have a website with everyone listed there, so I sent it to all the officers, and I asked them if they wanted to please post the notice on their website and their Facebook page. And I am not familiar with the Laurels. Tamsin, I don't know if you are. So that would be, if you want to share some additional contact information, that would be helpful.
The Laurels are on the east side, but there's two neighborhoods with an easement between the two. And the Laurels you access through Wendell Road. There's so yeah, they're on the east side.
So are they part, and some people might be part of the Lake Wyola Association, or?
They are on the list of possible members. The Lake Wyola Association limits their possible membership to the roads around the lake and then a few other roads that are up off, which gives them access through the beaches that Lake Wyola Association owns. But the Laurels the roads themselves aren't actually owned by LWA. It's kind of weird. They do work on them, but I don't know. It's a little sketchy because they don't actually own them, and I don't know that there's any kind of legal agreement around that.
So if there's a contact person in that neighborhood that the
assessor would have that. Becky could get that for you because she pays this woman pays the taxes on those roads.
All right, thank you.
Other questions? Eric, Melissa? Just make sure, Miriam, before I call on you that, no, I have 2 pages here, so I'm just kind of scrolling back and forth. Go ahead, Miriam.
So am I correct in understanding that LWAC tests the water at the LWA beaches? Is that how what? I thought.
Somebody here can answer that, Mark. Is that?
Yeah, Mark here. There's 3 Lake Wyola owned beaches, and those beaches are tested for E. coli every week for during this the swimming season, so through the summer.
And then the state tests the state beach, I assume.
State tests a state beach, but they use it. They don't measure E. coli. They measure a different organism. The Board of Health has attempted many times to get that data. They filed Freedom of Information Act requests, and the state has never given up that information. But but it's best to check with the Board of Health to see what action, to get the history of that.
So Mark, so the town is paying for the testing?
No, the association pays for the testing of the association beaches.
Okay, because that's what the question I had was, is it LWAC or is it LWA that's doing the testing?
It's the Lake Wyola Association.
Okay, all right, great, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, other questions? I guess I just have one kind of very broad question because I'm kind of new to the whole watershed management. So this might seem way too broad, but who is responsible for watershed management? I mean, we have different parties here, obviously the town, we have a lot of private property owners, we have Lake Wyola Association, we have LWAC, sort of where does the buck stop?
Oh my gosh, the $1 million question, Rita.
Multi-million-dollar
A
question.
multi-million-dollar question. So it really is a local, it is a local management, right? Because the state only manages lands that they own, right? The state does provide various funding sources for communities to do watershed management work. And the FERCog, we've been really advocating for whole watershed work, right? And whole watershed understanding. And as we know, watersheds cross municipal boundaries. So in this case, it's Wendell and Shutesbury are in the Lake Wyola watershed. So in an ideal world, we would have the town of Wendell, the town of Shutesbury, the Lake Wyola Association, and all of the other people who live around the lake who may not be members of Lake Wyola Association, right? As well as other private landowners, kind of all working together on this. And yeah, so the town, it's better to work as a group, right? As a team. If that's not possible for whatever reason, the town can certainly move forward on their own to do projects that are on town property or along road rights of ways. The town could move forward with an assessment project on their own. But going back to the question that Tracy had earlier about funding and public-private partnerships, that's really the best, the best way to go if you can. And the COG is available to help with grant writing. We're available for at least the next year and a couple of months, to continue talking about this particular watershed-based plan with the community. And yeah, I don't know.
It helps.
Yeah, it helps. I mean, it's daunting, but there are examples of multiple towns working together in Franklin County, Ashfield and Conway, Buckland, Holly, and Ashfield, that all share different watersheds. Recently, Montague, the Franklin Conservation District did a project for the Sawmill River, which, Lake Wyola sits at the top, right, for that. So, yeah, there are many, many opportunities, and we're here to help as much as we can if the town, requests additional assistance from us.
Good, thank you. We're kind of over our time, but if there's one or two more questions, I'd be happy to entertain them. Go ahead, Eric.
My question is pretty simple. I guess it's sort of a follow-up to Rita's question is where do we go from here? I mean, who moves the ball down the field here? That's my question, I guess.
Right. Well, I'm wondering if maybe after the site visit this summer, there might be a little bit more clarity about who's interested in moving the ball forward, right? Is it who beyond the town, for example, might be interested? And then once we know that, having further discussions about next steps, because frankly, you could do nothing more, right? You could just take this plan, the town could take this plan. Once it's approved, it can sit on a shelf. You can know that you're eligible for this certain pot of funding now, right? You've done the steps necessary to get that eligibility, and you could do nothing for a period of time.
Kimberly, do you want to mention the next 604B grant round?
So this assessment grant round, the 604B round, is likely opening up early this fall. And so again, you know, that summer site visit might crystallize some things for the town and the other stakeholders. And then if there's a consensus to move forward with a grant application for funding to do further assessment, we could help with that, and we could help scope that project out. You know, what do we need to focus on?
Great. What time in the summer are you thinking about doing that site visit?
Tamsin, do you have an idea yet?
I'm available July or August. I don't have a sense of what would be a better time of year on our end.
So if we were contemplating doing the 604B grant sooner rather than later, if it's going to be early fall, that the competitive round is going to be open, just to give us time.
Yeah.
Okay. Becky?
I just wanted to remind people that when we get the grant, there are grants that really support a partnership, but the town in itself can't put out funding to just repair private roads and that kind of thing. I just wanted to remind people that, yes, we can work in a partnership under specific grants like the 319 and the 604 and the MVP, but we can't just, you know, finance major implementation projects with town funds.
Okay, well, I want to thank you, Tamsin and Kimberly, for an excellent presentation and for bearing with us for a little bit longer than you were scheduled. We really appreciate your time, and I think we probably need some more conversation, some follow-up. So, and thanks to everybody who came this evening to hear the presentation. And stay tuned. We will assume we and FERCog will be getting information out about the, follow-up here, including the site visit.
Yes. Well, thank you all for coming tonight. We really appreciate all the feedback, and we look forward to seeing you sometime this summer.
Great.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
night.
you so much.
Good night. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is just a review from annual town meeting. Other than being really freezing.
Yeah.
That's the first thing that comes to mind for me. I don't know, Becky or Melissa or Eric, do you want to have observations?
I have one good one, and it's kudos to Eric for his audio.
Yes.
Magnificent planning and engineering and execution.
Yes, that was great. And that was a lot of moving of equipment. So thank you, Eric, because I know that was many hours of your time.
It's not over yet.
The
Stuff's still out in my,
I was going to say,
still
we
out
need
in my
to
garage.
come and unpack the stuff or move it
Yeah.
somewhere. Yeah, you think it's over when you get it into your truck, but after.
Yeah, no.
So no, you're.
Well, thank you. I do think that to answer, I appreciate that a compliment, but it seems to me that it will raise the question in the future about whether or not we're going to continue to do it outside. And
Yeah.
if we are, I mean, a lot of that equipment we used, most of it, frankly, was mine. And that's not the solution to that problem for the long run. I mean, so I'm glad to do it while I'm here and all that, but I don't know. It's not the answer in the long run.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm hoping maybe next year we can be back in the school. It's it's expensive. I think it's a lot more work. Case in
Yes.
point with the sound system.
Yes.
It was bad weather. I was really pretty miserable for most of the day. So,
Right.
yeah, I think we will revisit that.
And I did hear a couple of comments from people of my age group whose parents decided not to come, who have been coming for decades because it was so cold outside.
Yeah.
We don't want to exclude them. So,
I mean, I was surprised we got as good a turnout as we did, given the weather. So, content
wise, I would say there were a couple comments about like there being no school budgets there. I think we should make sure that happens. I mean,
absolutely. Yep.
I voted for the school budget, and probably most are here, obviously people did, but it really should be available for people to look at. They should be available. Both of them should be available.
I also thought too, Eric, on that real quick, is that maybe we have the FinCom information session. Maybe the school could do an information session so people could attend beforehand.
That's a good idea.
Sorry to interrupt you, Eric. I didn't want to lose that.
Yeah.
No, the other question I have that I know it was discussed at the meeting was, and I was thinking later, well, and I voted for this, but how does the camera thing from the school, how does that get on the agenda? How did it get on the warrant? If it wasn't by the capital planning committee, we never did it. The select board never put on the warrant.
Oh, the capital planning did hold a meeting.
Oh.
It went through a full capital planning process, but
Oh, it did. Okay, I'm sorry. Then
comments
that was
left
not
that
clear at that
fact
meeting.
out. Yeah, Bob just left
Okay.
that fact out and misrepresented.
Okay. Well, that's my bad for asking that question, because I didn't know that was. I didn't know that. That wasn't
No,
stated.
no, it wasn't clear from the comments at the meeting, but that there was a full meeting, Ellen as chair of the committee, it was brought to her first, the meeting was scheduled, the meeting was held, and then Bob didn't attend, but it was all above board.
Good. That's good. That's
It
good.
was, it was not by February 1st, that date he pulled out of the manual, but we hadn't been referencing the February 1st in the capital request. So how can you hold people, you have to acknowledge a date before you reprimand them for not following it. So.
And in my personal opinion, it's sort of an emergency situation. I mean, I would personally be willing to make exceptions to that rule, even if that was, but I think the capital planning should vet it. The capital planning committee should vet it, and they did, which I think is great.
Yep.
That's good.
No, Debbie Lee had prepared lengthy explanation. She, all the different vendors they viewed. We got a full presentation from Jackie and Debbie Lee to the capital planning.
And did capital planning approved it?
Yeah,
Okay,
unanimously.
Right. Well, that wasn't clear. That wasn't clear to me anyway, or maybe I missed it. But I was chattering away up there. Maybe I just didn't hear it or something. I don't know.
No, it wasn't made clear.
So that was a slight mistake by us or somebody, I would say.
Well, it was a matter of, whether the misinformation given by one member should be corrected, and it should have been.
Right.
And I apologize for not doing that. I kept going back and forth trying to get up there. And it didn't work out.
And it was getting late in the day. Speaking of late in the day, the last thing I'll say is the Lake Wyola Dam thing. I just think that maybe we should do that kind of agenda item earlier in the agenda. Just that obviously this is an exception. It was sort of crazy weather, but I mean, there really were half of the people had left by the time that was discussed. And that was really a big item, I think. It was an item, that whatever. I just think for or against it. I just think it should be had, and I think that the discussion was good. I just think it should have happened when more people were there. That's all.
Yeah, well, the meeting went on pretty long and there was a motion to move it earlier. In retrospect, maybe we should have, but what happens is
Right.
when you do that, then all those people leave and then all the rest of the articles, some of which were important. We had all the CPC articles.
Right.
So it's never going to be, perfect. I guess, my editorial about the dam bylaw was, I was really disappointed that it didn't pass. And I think we need to revisit it because I think the issues are not going to go away. And I see Mary David here, and I really appreciate, Mary, your having gotten up and spoken, because I think, what was lost in all the kind of passion about people having access was the fact that this is a very fragile resource. And right now, access is through what's essentially, a dangerous access point, down that embankment and across rocks and the stream, and for a whole variety of reasons, is way less than ideal. And so I was really disappointed, both in some of the comments and in the outcome. But I think we do need to have further discussion about that, and include the Conservation Commission some more too, because there is no access on that area where we used it. It's private property. I think for this summer, I assume once the culvert gets underway, that's all going to be closed off anyway. So it's not going to be, we're not going to have starting in mid-July, but this is going to come up again. And should come up again. I'd like to see it come up again, just to have more, have some more discussion. And
I do want to publicly thank Rita. I agree with you. I do want to publicly thank John for his well presented information.
Yeah.
I think he did a fantastic job.
I agree with that.
You did a really excellent job presenting. So, okay, anything else? Lessons, Becky, go ahead.
I have one small point, but it might be mute anyway. I had a comment from people that were sitting in the back, and they could not see anything but a sea of heads in front of them. We're on a downhill slope. And so when you're at the downhill and looking up, there was complaints that it was very difficult to see anything. And the recommendation was made that we reverse and put all of Eric's wonderful sound equipment at the far end of the field, which by, the physical design would be great, but I have a feeling it would be even more problematic for to run all that equipment, the electricity for all that equipment.
The fire department has a long AC cable. We didn't really use half. I don't know what percentage it we use, but I think it's possible. But
You think it's possible?
Yeah.
I think we could do that.
Let's see if we're going to have it
If
outdoors.
it's outdoor, yeah.
Yeah.
But I told him I would bring it up, so.
The road crew has a whole year to grade the field too, and we can put PFAS on it. So it'll be nice and level. It'll be like, it'll be beautiful.
Okay, on that note, I think we can wind up the discussion on the annual town meeting unless there's anything else. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the SES roof contract.
All right, so the building committee has reviewed the proposals for our roof project. The final portion of which is the asphalt roof at the school. And we received 8 bids. And the low bidder has been fully vetted at this point through the engineer firm who has called all the references. And although the company only has 3 or 4 other municipal bids, they are all asphalt roofs. And as the engineer said, you have to start somewhere. The recommendations from those 3 other projects were very good. One was quoted as saying that it was the cleanest work site they had ever seen, as well as the work being well done. And so we are going to requesting to award the contract to Mike's Construction Company out of Dudley, Massachusetts for the cost of $362,400. Did you want the contract up on screen, Rita?
Are
Or
we coming in to sign it?
yes,
Do we need to vote it
Actually,
tonight?
yes.
We have to vote it. So put it up, yeah, put it up on screen then,
Okay.
please.
And it takes just one signature. Okay, I had it right.
And Becky, is this a standard, is it a standard construction contract?
Yeah,
It's ours, it's our contract rather than their contract?
yes,
Okay. And Donna has looked at it?
yes.
Okay. So I'm the only signature then?
Yep. Oh, one more time. Sorry about that. Sorry, so here we are. Can everybody see it? Is it big enough?
Just to make it a little bit bigger. Yeah, okay, that's better.
Okay. So the basics are right here. Mike's Construction Company, 332 Mason Road Extension, Dudley, Massachusetts. It's based on the full bid documents of April 26th, request for bid. And here's all the different affirmative actions, insurance clauses, liquidated damages, assignment, inspection and reports, termination for cause, notice, severability, and governing law, the entire agreement, the REAP statement, and then the final execution would be signed by Rita Farrell and then the contractor.
And this is prevailing wage, right?
Yes.
And who does that monitoring?
I typically do the engineers, the last time that when I typically do, but with the engineers involved, they review it first and then send it to me.
Oh, okay,
So it has a double check with the engineers.
okay. So their contract extends through the construction period?
Through the full construction period. So they'll be monitoring the work. They'll
Okay.
come out, I believe,
They
4
do the
times.
sign offs?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, great. And when are they gonna begin?
The 26th.
Of
Potential
June?
of June, yeah.
Yeah, they'd have to wait until school's over.
Yeah.
And they'll be done by the end of the summer?
They believe they'll be done in 4 to 5 weeks.
Cool.
So, we're hopeful that they really will complete, potentially by the beginning of August, which would be ideal.
Great. Okay, that looks good. So do I hear a motion to approve the contract between the town of Shutesbury and Mike's Construction for the elementary school roof replacement in the amount of $362,400?
So moved.
Second,
Okay, is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Makepeace O'Neill, aye.
Stalker eye,
Carol, aye. That's a big relief. Get that.
really?
Yeah, been a long time coming. Okay, let's see, town administrator updates, last item on the agenda.
Okay, I'll start off with the first question for the board. Do you guys want to follow up? There was on the request at town meeting to hold another PFAS presentation.
Thoughts?
No, I can't hear you, Rita.
Oh, I'm sorry. There was a request at town meeting to have another presentation on PFAS.
Yeah. I would say we should wait until Fuss and, no, I'm not Fuss.
It's a tie and bond.
Ty and Bond, sorry. Yeah, until Fuss and O'Neill wants to come. No, until Ty and Bond wants to, when, you know, I think they've kept us informed, and I think there should be plans to keep us informed in the future. I don't think we have to do anything right now today.
This would be more for the public. When we had tie and bond at the last select board meeting, did we put out any kind of town announce on that, or?
Yes,
So there was a town announce.
I'll double check, but I think I did.
You know, I wouldn't bring, if we were going to do something, I wouldn't bring tie and bond back because we have to pay for it. But we have their presentation, correct?
Yeah, and it's up. Is it on the website? I
Website.
believe it's on the website. We put most of the materials up on the website after.
Well, what we could do, here's just a thought, Rita, going off what you just said. We could have a public viewing of that presentation because it was recorded and then collect questions.
Oh, right. Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah.
Get them answered.
Yeah.
Just use what we already have, because we're not quite at a place where we have too much new information, right?
Right.
And so kind of do public viewing of that recording and then collect some questions and then answer them as we can.
If we couldn't answer them, yeah, then we could pass them along.
If we couldn't answer them, yeah.
Could we do that as part of a select board meeting? Just set aside, what was it, about 45 minutes, that tie and bond? How long was that?
I think it was shorter. It was closer to.
Well, maybe it was only half an hour.
Yeah, it
Okay,
was only 8 slides.
all right. Could we do that as part of a select board meeting, not at the next meeting, but at a meeting in July, and then just put out a town announce that we're gonna play it? Is that weird to play it at a select board meeting?
I don't think so. You can start the select board meeting with a presentation or a review of the tie and bond presentation.
Right.
Call it a
Okay.
review of, and then
See if there are questions.
you can make some creative wordsmithing with an invitation.
We can figure it out. So yeah, if we can do it as part of a select board meeting, that's fine.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I would only suggest maybe July is still like the middle of
Yeah.
summer. People and
Yeah.
a lot of people aren't around, so.
Yeah. Yeah,
Might
so
want to make it when, well,
September.
maybe we'd have more information then too. I don't know, in the fall.
With an update after it, yeah.
well, maybe what we do is we can make people aware, but through a town announce that this is available at that select board recording, and that we're going to have a meeting in September
Mhm.
when we have more
I think that's a good idea,
data. Okay,
because
but
we really
in the
couldn't add
meantime-
anything to that report now. We could,
Right.
there's
Right.
nothing to add to it.
right. So people could listen to that.
But if people want, yeah, if people wanted to see it, they
Mhm.
should see it. I mean, we're not hiding
Yep.
anything. They should see it.
Yeah, okay, good. And then we'll do something in September. That's a great suggestion. Okay, good.
Okay, the other issue I'm working on is a legal use policy. I sent out a draft of it to you guys yesterday or today. And I'm just trying to make sure that we have something in place where we don't end up getting muddled up by multiple lawyers being hired by the town and the confusion that can cause and the expense. So if you all would take some time before the next meeting to look that over and give me feedback on it.
Okay.
So potentially we
You
could
sent something
get
out.
back.
Okay. All right, great.
And then the other issue, I think, I'm not sure if I don't think I sent it out, but the other issue that's come up in the last few months is we do not have a social media policy. And I think we're overdue on having one. So I've pulled up some other towns to look at as drafts. And I'd like to send those out to you all as well for consideration over the next couple weeks and maybe, into July, but I think it's another issue. And I just want to be sure that the select board would support work on that.
Sounds like a good idea to
I
me.
think that's a good idea.
Okay, great.
While we're in the policy mode here, Melissa mentioned that the COVID policy probably needs to be updated. I think that'd be another one.
Or
We can add that
retired.
to the list of things. It'd be good to just get current with that.
There's no town guest. I just am getting a message from the committee that's meeting downstairs that they can't get on to the internet. Did they do something for the? I have to go look. It could just be something turned off.
All right, we can round this up.
And so I'm
we
just
did
about
the
done.
contract vote, right? I just want to make sure the contract vote.
The contract is
vote is
voted.
done.
And the
Okay, good.
last
Thanks
thing I
for
just wanted to say was there was a request from FERCog for a pollinating committee.
Oh, yeah.
And I immediately had a response from Penny Jock that she would like to be part of that committee. So I think it's a good initiative.
Vote at the next meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
So
All
we'd
right.
have to create the committee and the charge I think is already developed by FERCog, but it's another issue to bring up at the next meeting.
Okay, they're texting me to please go help the building committee.
Bye.
Bye, thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.